first down. The handoff to Marlon Mack. Huge hole, 50-yard line. He's at the 40, still going near sideline. He's at the 10. He's at the 5, and he will score. Touchdown, Marlon Mack. Touchdown, INDY. And again, it's picked up. It's Darius Leonard. Leonard with his second INT, and he's streaking down the near sideline. He's at the 40. He's at the 30. He's at the 20. He's going to go. A pick six for the Maniac.
Horseshoe is back, baby. The horseshoe is back.
Hey, what's going on, Colts Nation? Welcome back to the Bring the Juice podcast. In this episode, I wanted to look at training camp, and I wanted to look at 5 Indianapolis Colts who I believe need to have great training camps in order to make this final 53-man roster. So just to clarify, these are guys that I think are kind of potentially fringe guys on this roster. I think they're going to have tremendous training camps in order to stay on this roster. Some of these guys more than others, which is why I have a top 5 list. And I'll start with my number 5. And this may be a little bit controversial, but I'll say it anyway. How about Jacob Eason? I mean, we think he's going to be the number 3 quarterback, but Frank Reich and Chris Ballard have said Jacob Eason's not just going to get handed the starting position. He's going to have to work like anybody else to make this final 53-man roster. Now, I do anticipate him beating out Chad Kelly for that number 3 quarterback spot, but it still is a competition nonetheless. And so I think Eason needs to stay sharp. He needs to continue to do what he does. He can't afford to get timid because, the Colts have – They've had moments where Chris Ballard's not afraid to admit his mistakes and move on. I mean, you saw that a couple of years ago with another 4th-round pick, Zach Banner. He didn't even get out of training camp. I mean, the Colts cut him like really, really quickly. And so that just tells you that Ballard wants the best players out there, and he's okay cutting even some of his draft picks. So I think Eason just makes the list for me there at 5. Honestly, there's not a ton of unknowns at this point, which I think is why Eason's on this list. Number 4 for me is Jordan Wilkins. Now, Wilkins right now is projected as the number 4 running back, and that shouldn't be a surprise to anybody, especially with the addition of Jonathan Taylor. You already had Marlon Mack and Nyheim Hines ahead of him on the depth chart. So I think for Wilkins, I hope they keep 4 running backs because I think especially with the lack of offseason and kind of the youth and inexperience at wide receiver, you should probably roll with 4 running backs as opposed to 6 wide receivers. That's just my opinion on it. And so Wilkins has been very effective when he's carried the ball. That's just been the issue. He just has not gotten a lot of reps sitting behind Marlon Mack and now presumably Jonathan Taylor as well. But I think Wilkins can offer some special teams help, and I think that he can be a very valuable piece, especially like we saw last year when Marlon Mack missed a couple games. The number 4 running back at that time, Jonathan Williams, he became incredibly important all of a sudden. So I think it's smart to keep Wilkins on the roster for that and also for his contributions on special teams. But I think he's going to have to continue to do what he does. I don't really have any worries about him doing that, but I think potentially could be a cut. I know I've seen some roster projections where Jordan Wilkins has not made the final 53-man roster. I ultimately think he will, but I think he's going to have to continue to prove to the Colts coaching staff over and over again why he deserves to stay on this roster this year. Number 3 for me, Hot Rod, Rodrigo Blankenship. He's right now in a kicking competition with incumbent Chase McLaughlin. Now, Derek and I have been very vocal in thinking that Chase McLaughlin has the upper leg right now in terms of the kicking battle just because he has experience on his side. He's got familiarity with this Colts team. And Hot Rod's coming in with no preseason games. So it's really going to be do or die for Hot Rod. He's going to have to wow coaches in order to win this kicking battle. And I think that's just what he's going to have to do because if he doesn't, if he's just pretty good and Chase is pretty good, I mean, I would give the advantage to Chase. I think unless Chase McLaughlin is completely terrible and Rodrigo Blankenship's just blowing him out of the water, I don't know if I see it happening unless Rodrigo's just incredible in camp, which could happen. You never know. He's got a monster leg. So we'll see what happens there. But, really whoever doesn't win this kicking battle, it's not like they're just going to be the backup. Like they are not going to be on this team more than likely. So I think that's why I have it a little bit higher than some of the other guys who I think even though Jordan Wilkins will probably still be number 4, and even though Jacob Eason will be number 3, I think that I'm pretty confident they'll stay on the roster. Not so much with Hot Rod. Number 2 for me, a wide receiver, Reese Fountain. Now, Reese had a really strong end of training camp / preseason before that injury happened that took him out of the season last year. I really like what Reese was doing in the preseason. He was really playing some good games the last couple games of the preseason. And I think it's a big year for him. I really do. I think he's got to prove a lot. The Colts added more depth to their wide receiver room in the draft, obviously with drafting Michael Pittman and Desmond Patman. I think Reese is going to be in a competition with Patman, with Marcus Johnson, even Ashton Doolin. I think the Colts are going to keep 5 receivers, but if they keep 6, he may have a chance to compete there for 6. But he's going to have to prove that he can play on special teams as well as contribute as a wide receiver. So I'm very interested to see if he continues to build off of that strong training camp he had last year, and if he's fully recovered from that injury. It'll be very interesting to watch for me. Then number 1 for me, I think this one is pretty obvious. Maybe it's not, but for me, it's pretty obvious. That's Taekwon Lewis. Taekwon Lewis, this last couple of years, he's been a major disappointment for where he was drafted in 2018. He was a second-round pick, and he's just not even come close to scratching the surface of the value the Colts gave up to draft him in that season. So Taekwon Lewis, this is a big year for him. The Colts have beefed up that defensive interior a lot. I think Taekwon Lewis still has a shot at the defensive end starting position. I don't know if he's going to win it, but I think he maybe at worst, if he stays on this team, will be a key backup. But I could also see the Colts electing to potentially cut Lewis and move on from their losses and maybe give a guy like Robert Windsor a chance, the 6th-round pick this year. So for me, Taekwon Lewis has the most to prove by far this year. He's been a major up to this point. You can call him a draft bust. He's been a bust up to this point, but he still has another season to prove his stuff. Training camp will be the big time for him to really show out. Obviously, right now, with Pats not coming on, there's not a whole lot that we can fully tell. But for me, when Pats come on, Taekwon Lewis better be ready to go, because Chris Ballard gave him a big talking to at the end of last season, and really a swift kick in the butt like, Taekwon, this is your last chance to shine. I really hope Taekwon Lewis shines, especially for the value the Colts got him at. But it's really going to be up to him, and he has to have a strong preseason, I think, to have a chance at being on this roster this year. So what do you guys think? Was there somebody I missed? Was there a number that you think should have been a flip-flop? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks, guys, and go Colts.